Is it legal to download and play ROMs? It may seem like harmless fun, but the reality is that in most cases, you probably are breaking the law. It's difficult to know what is and is not allowed when it comes to emulation. I mean, this stuff is so readily available these days. The laws surrounding emulation are intentionally vague, and these giant game companies don't want you to know what rights you have as a consumer. Well, wonder no more, because in this video, I'm going to attempt to break it down for you, going over what is legal and what is not legal when it comes to ROMs, hacks, and even those newly manufactured cartridges that you see all over online shopping websites. Please keep in mind that I am not a lawyer, but I have read through the laws and I did a ton of research for this video, and this is, to the best of my knowledge, factual information. Of course, there's always the chance that I got something wrong, so it's always best to do your own research before making any decisions. To fully understand what rights we have, let's first take a look at the history of US copyright law and how it stands today. Copyright law in the United States has existed for quite some time, being first established in 1790 and has been modified and updated only a handful of times throughout US history. It wasn't until the 1970s when Congress realized the current copyright laws, which at the time were from 1909, were outdated and there had been extensive technological advances made throughout the 20th century. Things like television, motion pictures, and radio broadcasts were not properly protected under law. These works were addressed in the Copyright Act of 1976. But with the ever-growing popularity of computers, Congress also realized there might be additional issues in regards to computer-related works. So in 1974, Congress established CON2, or the Commission on New Technological Uses of Copyrighted Works. The goal of CON2 was to study these computer-related copyright issues and recommend changes to the upcoming Copyright Act of 1976, the law that is the basis of our current copyright laws. It wasn't until 1978 that CON2 issued their final report, recommending computer programs be explicitly protected under copyright law. Their recommendations were largely implemented in the Computer Software Copyright Act of 1980. Because of this, when you legally purchase a piece of software, including games, you, the consumer, are granted a number of rights under Section 117 of US copyright law. This includes the right to a backup copy of software you rightfully purchased. You'll hear a lot of arguments about this specifically. My interpretation is that it's meant to allow you to create a backup in case the original gets damaged. After all, this was the mid-1970s and storage media was not reliable. My takeaway is that you're supposed to use your original copy as your primary copy, and it doesn't specifically allow you to use the backup you create in tandem with the original copy. It also allows the creation of a backup in order to utilize a piece of software that you paid for by installing it to your hard drive and loading it into your computer's RAM, things like that. It allows you to make copies as long as it is necessary to do so in order to use the software. Keyword necessary. It's worth noting that there is no mention that the software must be run on the specific piece of hardware it was created for. For example, running an NES game on an NES versus running an NES game on your computer. One might make the argument that it is necessary to create a backup, dumping the cartridge ROMs, in order to utilize the game software on your computer. You might find conditions prohibiting this in user agreements, but the lawfulness of user agreements are questionable, as courts are split on the actual legality of them. So now that we know the protections we have, let's take a look at how that translates to the ROMs and hacks you can find all over the internet. So can we hop onto Google and legally download ROMs if we already own the cartridge? No. Unfortunately, that's not legal, as you did not physically create the backup of your particular copy that you legally paid for. Now, besides file creation dates and other metadata, there's not really any way for anyone to know if that ROM came from your cartridge or the internet. But I'm a man of character, so I would recommend the lightest gray route when it comes to following the law. You gotta rip your own cartridges, create a copy of your very own media. Now, this is no walk in the park for your average retro gamer. Though still not widely available, there are more cartridge dumping tools out there now than ever before. Another way to get legal ROMs that doesn't require expensive hardware is to rip the ROM files from a digital download that you legally paid for. Places like Steam have retro games for sale by SEGA and others that are actually just running emulators, and these emulators use ROMs. If you navigate to the game folder and poke around a bit, you can usually find them no problem. So what about ROM hacks? Are they legal? In my opinion, absolutely, provided you do not infringe on the copyrights of any company whose game you hack. Modding console games is really no different than modding PC games. The general consensus is that companies should not look at this as an infringement, but rather as passionate fans expressing themselves or providing a free service like language translation. If you rip your own copy, patch it yourself, and do not sell or otherwise distribute copyrighted ROMs, there is no infringement. It may be infringing on the terms of service or a license agreement, but again, the legality of those are questionable. How about those new games for classic consoles? Can people legally put these out without a license from Nintendo or SEGA? Absolutely. These are perfectly legal. Back in 1992, SEGA sued a company called Accolade, who produced a number of unlicensed games for the Genesis. Initially, SEGA won this case, and Accolade was ordered to recall every unlicensed cart they sold. Accolade appealed this decision and ultimately won the case. So in case law, it's perfectly fine for new games like this to exist. What's not okay are those 101 style game compilations. These types of cartridges are for-profit software piracy. Just because these games are old doesn't mean they're free to sell or give away. The games on these compilations are protected by copyright. And what companies like Nintendo hate the most is when people make money off their intellectual property. And unless they're going out there making a deal with every company whose game is on these compilations, they're flat out stealing, and I would highly suggest not playing a part in breaking federal law. A lot of people out there like to buy and sell games, but these games I would not resell because they are absolutely illegal, and even if you paid for the cartridge, you have no rights to resell these games. ROM hacks on cartridge, like my Mario one here, are no different. They are not distributing these hacks properly and are selling you this intellectual property, which they have no rights to. The Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1998 brought forth harsh penalties to software piracy and states that violators can face up to 5 years in prison and up to $250,000 in fines. But I must say that that is a worst case scenario and is not likely to happen. What about those carts that use SD cards and you can load them up with all your favorite ROMs? These are completely legal when sold to you, provided they don't contain any unauthorized ROMs. It's up to you to provide your own, which again I might suggest ripping your own ROMs, as it is the best route to use these legally. So now you are informed a little bit on what to look for in regards to software piracy with ROMs and hacks. It's definitely something to keep in mind, but usually you won't see companies coming after you for downloading their games. Not these days. The chances of that are very low. Never say never, but it really isn't worth it to track down and prosecute some random gamer who just wants to play a game of Donkey Kong Country on their laptop. How about you guys? Do you stay away from ROMs, or do you think they're fine? I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. Well, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, make sure to hit that like button to let me know. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I make all sorts of retro related videos. If you made it this far in the video, I'm sure you'll like my other ones too. Thanks for your time today, guys. Goodbye.